the lockdowns, which Suzanne helped us pass in Placer County's Board of Supervisors. Sue tried to get passed in the Sacramento County Board of Supervisors, and we passed it in over a dozen Board of Supervisors as well. We've also tried to get the legislature to step up and do its job. We have introduced a resolution on multiple occasions to terminate the state of emergency, actually in May of last year, by the way, was when we first did that, because we saw what was happening. But, kind of this whole time, the recall has been humming along in the background, with people like Heidi, who was one of the pioneers of it, who had just said enough is enough, and we're brick by brick, signature by signature, building what became the greatest citizens movement in California history. And so, I've been at the Capitol for 5 years and fighting the corruption and the dysfunction, but I see the recall, and I joined forces with it because I saw it as bringing a whole new element to the equation. The people of the state putting their mark directly on our government. And, that's the beautiful thing about it. By the way, who here signed the recall? Anyone by chance? All right. Who here gathered signatures? Wow. Fantastic. That is the beauty of this thing, is we now have this golden opportunity to change our state entirely. And it's not because of anything that politicians like me did. It's not because of anything that the state party did. It's because of what you did. The hero of this story is the California citizen. And as Matt Oliver was mentioning, every force has been arrayed against us from the start. Obviously, the media is not on our side. The social media companies are not on our side. They try to snuff out our voices. Special interests have given Gavin Newsom over $50 million. Our political class has tried to change the rules and, tilt the scales in his favor in every way they can. And they told us that we would never even qualify the recall. Not only did we qualify it, but it was the largest signature drive in United States history. And then they told us, okay, you qualified it, but it's just this quirky procedure that exists, and it's a small fraction of the population who signed it, and so on and so forth. You'll never actually win the recall. Well, all the polls right now show, including one today, that it is a dead heat. We absolutely have a chance to win. Because the one thing that all of these forces arrayed against us could not touch was, the solitary man or woman sitting at a table, pen and paper, offering it to their neighbors. And that is what has been behind this movement from the start. And, the social media companies, the media, the political class, the special interests, they can't touch it, which is why this infuriates them, which is why the recall infuriates them. So I'll give you just a brief overview of my argument for the recall. And I know that there's probably not a lot of people here that I need to convince. But when I talk to voters of all stripes, these are the points I try to make. And I start by saying, by the way, what do you have to lose? Take a chance on change. And by the way, if you don't like the result, you can vote for a return to political racketeering next year. But what James and I have seen in our time in the legislature, and as you've felt in your daily lives, is that we have a state government that is fundamentally broken. It's broken. Let's just take a few examples. When you pay the highest gas taxes while driving over the deepest potholes, your government's broken. When you pay for billions and billions in homelessness spending while watching tent cities multiply and multiply around you, your government is broken. When your child's education is funded up to $26,000 a year, yet in many parts of the state, she still isn't taught to read, your government's broken. When you live in fear that your light switch won't work or your community will burn down, your government is broken. When you work hard, get a good job, do everything right, yet can't afford a down payment on a house until your 40s, your government is broken. When you're told to take a shorter shower, as water flows abundantly into the ocean, your government is broken. When you watch calculator-wielding thieves rob department stores in broad daylight, waving at the security camera on the way out, your government is broken. When you walk down public streets that function as restrooms and injection sites, your government is broken.
Yep.
When your job is deemed inessential, and then your unemployment check flies over your mailbox and lands in a state prison, your government is broken. When your child's face is smothered in cloth for no good reason, your government is beyond broken.
Yeah.
So everywhere you look, it's the same story. As Californians, we sacrifice the most and we get the least in return. It's no wonder that 2/3 of our residents now say that kids growing up in California today will be worse off than their parents. And it's no wonder that more and more of our very neighbors are packing up U-Hauls to avoid that fate. Anyone know anyone by chance? Anyone thinking of doing so yourself? All right, Mark, you might have a problem here. Well, that's right. I have had so many people tell me that if the recall succeeds, I'll stay. If not, I'll go. I mean, I don't think a single event will have ever had a greater impact on a state's population. But it's just staggering. I mean, this used to be the state where anyone could get ahead, where the full glory of the American dream was realized.
The Golden State.
Now it's the state that so many can't wait to leave behind. So what happened? How did this happen? I mean, how did our beautiful state get to be last in the country in everything? What broke our state government? And I believe the answer is very simple. It's what has long distinguished failing states from prosperous ones, and that's political corruption. California is the furthest thing from a government of, by, and for the people. It is a government of corrupt politicians controlled by lobbyists for the benefit of special interests. And no one has ever personified that corruption like Gavin Newsom.
Yep.
It's true, which is actually one thing we have Gavin to thank for. He's just provided the perfect illustration of everything that's wrong with our state. By the way, someone asked me, I think it was an AP reporter the other day, he asked me, can you think of anything you have in common with Gavin Newsom? And I had to think a long time, and then I finally said, well, I got one thing. We live in the same assembly district. He's my constituent.
Yeah.
But as long as dictionaries are printed, when you look up the word hypocrisy, the first entry will always be the French one. But what was even more revealing about that big night out was the company our governor keeps. Remember who it was? A table full of lobbyists. They wine him, they dine him, they elect him, they own him. They've given over $50 million for this recall alone. And it makes sense. When buying politicians is your business model, you'll pay anything to stop a citizens' movement. Let's just take one example. PG&E. Heard of them? The Roseville folks here have it pretty good. Jealous. PG&E, as they have given our state catastrophe after catastrophe, wildfires, blackouts, felonies, they've given Gavin Newsom more money than any other politician. They even pay his wife's salary. It was Newsom's biggest funder, massive unions, that told him to sign and ruthlessly enforce AB 5, putting countless California freelancers out of work. And then during COVID-19, Newsom took this corruption to new levels. Huge no-bid contracts were awarded to the governor's top donors. Powerful interests, including Hollywood, were exempted from lockdowns as small businesses died in droves. But of course, worst of all, in what might be the political crime of the century, this governor expelled millions of kids from their classrooms. Longer than any governor, 50th out of 50, while his own kids were in in-person private school. He inflicted untold harm on a generation of young people. And why? Just so he can keep getting money from teachers' unions. At least he's not getting any from Holly anymore. That's right. I'm glad to hear that. You know, any teachers tell them to opt out. They don't, they're funding the recall, or the opposition to the recall. It is hard to imagine a greater abuse and betrayal of the public trust. If that is not grounds for removal, I don't know what is. Time and again, my friends, the Newsom regime has proven the truth of that famous expression. Power corrupts, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Corruption was already causing California's decline, but Newsom's absolute corruption has brought that decline to a total free fall. You know, Florida's been getting a lot of bad press lately. They're going through a COVID spike right now. It's a bad one. It's nowhere near as bad as California's, which had the largest spike in the country. And even today, if California's outcomes matched Florida's, well, millions more kids would have been in school, hundreds of thousands more workers would be employed, and thousands more people would be alive. Proverbs tells us that where there is no vision, the people perish. Yep. You know that verse? Yep. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Well, in Gavin Newsom's California, there's been no vision. That goes without saying. But it's not because he's blind. This governor drove our state off a cliff with eyes wide open. And now he wants to do it again. Mask mandates are back. We're seeing vaccine mandates like no other state has. And he is more than hinting at shutting down schools again. I'll tell you this, if I'm your governor, that will not happen. So here's how we begin to fix our broken state government. On day one, on minute one, I would terminate the state of emergency. By the way, that wipes out every state and local emergency order automatically. Now, Gavin Newsom, he loves executive orders, right? Loves them. Here's the thing about executive orders. You can undo them with executive orders. For every executive action that Gavin Newsom has taken to violate our rights and destroy our freedoms, I will take executive action to restore those rights and defend those freedoms. Just wonderful state agencies that we love so much. These menacing state agencies, CARB, the Water Board, the EDD, the Department of Public Health, you name it. I will tame them with a new directive. Yeah. Serve the people of California. Don't harass them, don't harangue them, don't run their lives, don't ruin their lives. Yep. School is open, full-time, 5 days a week, no excuses, and no masks required. Woo! But unlike our current governor, I will respect our Constitution. Kind of a novel concept. And our separation of powers. It's kind of what James and I have been fighting him in court about. So what I'll do is I'll bring a special session of the legislature, and I'll throw down the gauntlet. Take your job seriously at long last. Start governing in the public interest and serving the people of California, or face the same fate as Gavin Newsom in next year's election. I spent 5 years in the legislature. I know the one thing our state's politicians respond to is political pressure, the fear of losing their jobs. So imagine what we'll be able to do when they see the governor lose his job. That'll be the order of the day. Pave our roads, store our water, manage our forests, maintain our grid, fund our police, do the things government is supposed to do them well, and do nothing else. Yeah. You see, in this historic election, with ballots on their way right now, we have a chance not just to reject the extraordinary abuses and failures of the Newsom governorship, but to turn the page on all the long-standing abuses and failures that have gotten us to this point. We can turn the page on our state's disregard for the well-being of our kids, our students, by empowering families with school choice. We can turn the page on our state's disrespect for the welfare of our workers by enshrining as fundamental the right to earn a living. We can turn the page on our state's disparagement of religious freedom by putting worship and fellowship beyond the reach of any bureaucracy.
Yep.
We can turn the page on the California exodus by rolling back every special interest giveaway that makes it so hard for ordinary folks to get by here. And we can turn the page on this dark era of government control by lighting a new spark of liberty and self-government.
Yeah.
Self-government. This is the moment to rekindle that great American innovation, to renew the meaning of we the people. So here's the thing. I happen to think the most important job of our next governor is to make it less important who the governor is.
Yeah.
By returning power to local communities and their citizens.
Yep.
He's made by Suzanne and Heidi and Tiffany and Holly. Tamika, I guess you'll be at the federal level, but you'll be doing good work. Less power in the governor's hands means more power in your hands.
Yep.
To live your lives as you see fit.
Yep.
And to have your say in our shared future. That is the larger promise of this recall. Revitalizing the whole idea of citizenship.
Yeah.
Reviving those forgotten words from our Declaration of Independence, maybe the most important ones of all, the consent of the governed.
Yeah.
See, at the end of the day, this is a movement not just to fire America's worst governor, though it's certainly that. It's a little less competition after New York the last few days. It's not just a movement to fire America's worst governor. It is a movement to save America's greatest state. We have already made history, and now comes the fight for California's future. I happen to believe California is worth fighting for.
Yes.
I know all of you do as well, and it is such an honor to be in that fight with you. Thank you very much.